thank you all again for making the time today. Very, very excited to share the presentation with you today. If you just want to flip over to the next slide there, the presentation today is brought to you by Bucket List, which is the #1 employee rewards and recognition platform, and HRCI. And the focus of the presentation will be on how rewards and recognition can help build a high performance culture for your organization. And with that in mind, we're very lucky to be able to tap into the brain of our special guest speaker, Jason Lindstrom. Jason is a bit of a serial entrepreneur. He's helped build 3 hyper-growth organizations, and he's currently the CEO over at Bucket List Rewards, an employee rewards and recognition platform. And Jason's worked with a variety of organizations over his career, including everything from startups to Fortune 100 companies, in helping them build great workplace cultures. Some of those organizations include the Royal Bank of Canada, Orlando Magic NBA team, a ton of universities, lots of companies in the healthcare space, and much more.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the introduction, Curtis. I really appreciate that. And just by way of my introduction, what I'm most excited about is just really and genuinely adding value to everybody attending here today. And our mission is to help people leaders build the best cultures possible. And I often say this, I've been in your shoes, I've attended many webinars, and my favorite sessions are ones where I get sort of 1, 2, 3 takeaways that I can implement into my organization. And it's our goal that you will have indeed 1, 2, 3 plus takeaways. In fact, at the end of the session, I love to ask everybody, what did you find most valuable? And I'd also love to introduce my co-host. I'm really pleased that Curtis had a chance to join us here today. He's a culture evangelist. He has over 15 years senior leadership experience. He's also a passionate people leader. And 2 fun facts about Curtis. He's delivered professional speaking engagements in over 20 different states. And he's also a former touring rock star, signed to a label and everything. Just prior to this call, I was trying to find him on Spotify and YouTube. But Curtis, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the very wonderful introduction. I appreciate it very much. One thing I'll mention, just everyone, obviously we want this to be interactive, so please feel free to use the chat feature. We have some poll questions we're going to throw at you as well, but super excited to share the content with you today. And so just taking a quick look at our agenda, first, we're going to start off by exploring the most common issues and opportunities facing companies today. And then we'll discuss how you can utilize employee rewards and recognition to measurably build a high performance culture. And then, of course, we're going to open up the floor and leave some time for Q&A at the end.
Awesome. And as I'm sure we're all borderline Zoom experts at this point, feel free when it comes to questions to type them into the chat window. There's also that little Q&A feature, so feel free to use that as well. But questions are 100% welcome. If we can, we might try to answer them on the fly, but at the end, we've set aside some time to do a deeper dive as well. Awesome. So what are the most common issues facing companies today? I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of senior leadership teams, and I've heard many of their common pain points. It's really interesting. Pain points and opportunities depend upon where a company is in its life cycle. So a startup obviously has different goals and objectives than, say, an enterprise with 1,000 to 10,000 employees. But based upon all those conversations and even research from the Harvard Business Review, these are the 4 most common. So organizations want to recruit great staff. They want to retain top talent and top performers. They're interested in maintaining customer relationships and driving and increasing revenue. I'm now going to ask you, the attendees, who would like to solve or figure out these problems. And I'm going to pop it up as a poll question. So just give me 1 second. You don't just have to check one box. You can check multiple boxes if you think so. So I'm just launching that poll. So you should see up on screen. Do you want to solve any of these challenges? Recruiting great staff, retaining top performers, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to let this run for about 5 to 10 seconds, then I'll share the results back with you. Awesome. There's lots of responses coming in. Thank you, team. Great participation. I'm going to go ahead and end poll. And I'm going to share the results with everybody.
Wow.
So you should see the I guess the winner or category of most interest is how to retain top performers. Good news is Curtis has got some great content and ideas around this. We're also going to spend a bunch of time on how to recruit great staff, how we can use rewards and recognition to recruit great staff, and of course, maintaining customers' relationships and driving up revenue as well. So feels like we're definitely on topic with our presentation today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm going to jump to the next slide here.
So, Jason, let me ask this question to you then. Based on your experience, why do you think rewards and recognition in particular is such a powerful tool?
I know many of you are from the HR and people leadership space, and we all kind of intuitively know, or even statistically know, the importance of rewards and recognition. But just to level set, there's an author by the name of Michael LeBouf. He wrote a book called The Greatest Management Principle in the World. And his quote is that the things that get rewarded and appreciated get done. So a lot of us know that, again, intuitively, and there's a ton of stats to support that. But I like to dig deeper. I love to share the more meaningful insights. There's another quote from Frank Blake. He's a former chairman and CEO of Home Depot. He was credited with doing a turnaround of Home Depot during the financial crisis. He helped them get to over 66 billion in revenue and over 3 billion in net income. Anyways, the quote that Frank's credited with is, when you recognize people for extraordinary work and you tell a story, everyone remembers that moment. The person you recognize is thrilled, and everybody else is thinking, I want a story told about me too. Now storytelling is super important. Here's why. Statistically, and research indicates that storytelling is up to 22 times more memorable than just facts. And I intentionally chose this background image. I'm sure many of us have been around a campfire exchanging stories with friends that stay in our memory for weeks, sometimes years, or maybe it's over a glass of wine. People are hardwired to learn through the narrative. And I think it's more important these days than ever before to break through all the noise and all the clutter with social media, with email, with instant messaging. People are quickly overwhelmed with data, and they do forget very, very quickly. Specifically, and I think you might enjoy this stat, how quickly do people forget? There's something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, and you can see a graph of that over on the right-hand side. And in summary, within 1 hour, people typically forget or they only retain about 44% of what they just learned. But stories break through that. Compelling stats are okay. But I think as leaders, we're always looking for interesting ways to get in front of our team to help bring core values alive, to help drive specific behaviors. And just to summarize around the recognition piece, if you really want to make recognition impactful, you want to keep it timely, you want to keep it specific and tell those mini stories. You want to be frequent because people do forget recognition, and you want to weave in your organizational values. But let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. And Curtis, I think you might have another question.
Yeah, so let's talk about fixing those pain points that we identified at the top of the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, let's connect the dots. How can rewards and recognition fix the pain points? Perfect. So I'm going to talk about recruiting great staff first. How can we, in fact, recruit great staff? So no surprises, one of the most effective tools when it comes to rewards and recognition to getting more applicants is an employee referral program. And so today I'm going to share a few stats. I'm also going to share a story on how you could have some success with this. So very briefly, I know many of you might already have a program in place, but for those who don't, it can be an incredibly powerful way to drive good applicants into the organization. So when employees refer one another, referred candidates tend to be 55% faster to hire. 88% of employers said that referrals are the #1 best source for applicants. Referrals also stay at the job longer, and there's a higher acceptance rate. And then personally, we've actually recently launched an employee referral reward program here at Bucket List Rewards. 2 people we've hired, Jaren and Lauren. They're awesome. Like they're just, and Curtis has a chance to work with them as well. Yeah, like they just fit. They're super fun to work with. The onboarding really fast. Like it's such a delight.
Great people know great people.
100%. And because I know many of you already have an employer referral program in place, I wanted to share a story from an organization called InMobi. And I want to talk about how they breathed life into a stale program, how they drove up participation, and how they got more people to kind of come on out, if you will. Who is InMobi? They are a tech organization. They now have over 1,000 staff. They're multinational. They have staff in India, North America. Let me give you a little bit of a backgrounder on InMobi. So at the time, they're a 900-person company. They're supported by 6 recruiters. And what they found was that it was nearly impossible for those 6 recruiters to keep up with all the hiring demands of the company. And what they decided to do was to relaunch their referral program, because what they had found was that there's a small number of employees sending out the vast number of referrals. And because they have a large staff, they're like, why don't we tap into this larger group? And the baseline is they were receiving 20% of new candidates from the referrals, and they just wanted to significantly increase this, as I'm sure many of us would. So what did they do? They rolled out an entirely new program. They found some awesome new rewards, and how you reward and incentivize a program does matter. And I'll share some ideas that they had. They also made the program really easy to use. They set up an email where all employee referrals could be sent to. And they also created super fast feedback loops. So as referrals were sent in, they reply back and CC employees who sent the referral through to quickly create a communication loop. So they're always in the know. Next up, they did an absolutely exceptional job promoting the program. And maybe in the chat window, I'm going to ask this, and I think I know the answer. How many people out there have launched a new program and kind of gotten crickets? Or maybe they launched a new program, but the participation isn't quite as high as they hoped. Has anybody ever had that issue? Any attendees out there? And feel free to, yes, thank you, Kelly. Feel free to type the answer in the chat window. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Thank you. Definitely. Awesome. There we go. I too have seen this happen many times inside of organizations. And in my experience, how you roll out, how you promote the HR initiative or any initiative is super important to its participation level and its engagement. And so something InMobi did that was just awesome was they had a multi-channel promotion, and I want to kind of walk through that now. So first of all, they launched the program in what they called huddles. So remember, at the time they had 900 staff. They broke it out to small groups of 20 to 30 staff to really walk through the employee referral program, see if there's any questions, and also to create excitement around it. I've also done this. I've worked with companies with 1,000, 10,000 staff, and you break them up into smaller groups, and obviously naturally participation level is much higher. Next up is they launched a bunch of screensavers and posters around the office. Like many companies, InMobi, they had TV screens hung on all sorts of walls, and they had a bunch of cool posters made up, and they also promoted a bunch of really cool rewards. Over on the right-hand side is an example. And just for example, if you were to refer a head of gaming, that would make you eligible for a Napa weekend getaway for 2. I think that would be awesome. That's something I would certainly love to take my wife along to. Or maybe you help them refer and recruit a senior product manager. Well, then you could be eligible for a wine club membership. Obviously, they had a whole variety of awards that were eligible. These are just 2 that really stuck out to me. They also did an amazing job publicly recognizing staff. And very specifically, they had leaders participate in the recognition of the program. They even had the CEO recognizing employees for sending through employee referrals. And again, from my experience, whatever leaders pay attention to, the rest of the staff naturally will pay attention to as well. And so again, this drove really good participation. Lastly, they did some kind of cool things. Like one of the rewards was the opportunity to win a Vespa. They parked a Vespa in their San Francisco office. And each time an employee referred somebody else, they were entered into a lottery to win this InMobi themed Vespa scooter. So lots of cool ways to really bring the program to life. Another question for you, the attendees. I know we talked a lot about experiential rewards, but maybe type your answer into the chat box again. What do you think are more impactful, cash or non-cash experiential rewards? And go ahead, and non-cash, depends upon the person, indeed. Non-cash. You guys, you're an incredibly smart audience to pump some tires. I love it. Awesome. Okay. I, I think we're in agreement and alignment. You're totally right. People find experiential rewards more motivating than cash. Not me saying that. There's a white paper from Wichita State University to confirm this. More importantly, Google, for example, they launched their own massive internal A/B test where they tested cash versus experiential rewards. They found out that the experiences were a lot more impactful. That's not to say in some cases that cash doesn't make sense, and cash can be a great motivator and a compensation type of reward. So, and cash does drive our economy, so I'm not discounting it, but there's definitely a huge amount of value with experiential rewards. So where did they land after they launched this program? They got some great results. So the old program, just as a reminder, they sourced 20% of their new hires from the program. When they launched the new program, after 6 months, the company was sourcing 50% of its tech hires via referrals. So just an awesome and very impactful way to get some really good people through the door. And so thank you, Curtis. You're the man. I saw somebody ask, will we receive the presentation in some form? 100%. We'll send the presentation. And as Curtis said, we'll also be sharing the recording as well, along with all the notes and citations as well. Wonderful. So next up, let's talk about retaining top performers. And Curtis, would you mind walking us through this section, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we mentioned at the top of the presentation, this was a really popular area for all of you guys when we gave that poll question. So very excited to share some best practices from what I've seen. I think, hands down, one of the best recognition strategies that I could recommend is peer-to-peer level recognition. If you empower your staff to recognize one another for great work, you're going to immediately see a direct impact on the overall company morale. And I would even take that one step further and say that when you allow for organic recognition at the peer level to be embedded across your company, employee performance, retention, and engagement will all skyrocket. And I've got a really great example that I'd love to share with you. So we did a case study of Royal Bank. Jason, if you just want to pop to the next slide there. Royal Bank, you'll most likely be familiar with because they're one of the largest banks in the world. And they're a really great example of how an organization can completely transform its culture by focusing on their employee recognition efforts. Next slide, please. So when Royal Bank was looking to improve their employee engagement levels, they first had to analyze what they were already doing to determine what, if anything, was working well. So they had some light recognition taking place, but it wasn't really having the kind of impact that they were hoping to see around overall employee engagement. They also had about 30 different business units, so quite a few, and they were struggling to provide communication and visibility into the great work happening across the entire organization. So after taking a critical look at what they were doing, they were able to identify a few ways in which they could immediately improve their recognition efforts. One of the first things that they identified right from the outset was that they were essentially only giving out recognition once a month and in company shoutouts. So as a result, the recognitions that they were giving felt sort of inorganic because they were delayed and they weren't in the moment. So in some cases, you had recognitions that were being called out, 3 or 4 weeks after the behavior was identified. And so it ended up feeling sort of overdue and maybe no longer relevant. In addition to that, the recognitions were being manually compiled by someone and then being issued after the fact. So not only did it feel not relevant, but it was also cumbersome and time consuming. It took somebody's time to compile that. So in summary, it wasn't really all that effective. But what they were able to do, if you want to flip to the next slide there for me, Jason, was make some key decisions early on. And one of those was to introduce consistent in the moment recognition program that increased visibility across all of the business units. So after some internal planning and discussion, they created a new recognition initiative called High Five, which allowed for both manager to peer and peer-to-peer recognitions to take place across the entire company. These recognitions were being provided on a daily basis. So peers began recognizing each other for the awesome work that they were doing and calling it out right in the moment as it happened. But they were also able to hold on to some of the traditional recognition efforts that they already had in place by still providing shout outs in the monthly meetings that they were doing. But instead of providing the shout out for the behavior that maybe happened 3 or 4 weeks prior, they were just highlighting the day-to-day recognitions that were taking place throughout the course of the month. On top of that, they also set up a recognition feed in their Slack environment, which is what they were using for instant messaging, so that employees could see recognitions immediately as they were happening and taking place. And then, of course, they could comment and acknowledge the great work happening across the company. So let's talk about the outcomes. If you just want to flip to the next slide for me, Jason. Their results were pretty incredible. So they had a really awesome direct impact on engagement and retention. In fact, they were able to exceed the goals that they set in place by over 400% in a short period of time. So it was a fantastic success for them, and they're still seeing great results today. In fact, not only have they been able to retain their best employees, but they've also started to attract new pools of talent to the team as well. I love sharing this story personally because it's such a cool example of how a company could already be providing some level of recognition, but perhaps not seeing the results that they're looking for. But with a little bit of guidance and some slight tweaks, you can really elevate what you're doing and obtain measurable results as well. I've got another example I'd like to share. If you want to flip to the next slide here for me, Jason. Thank you. And that is for a company called Home Instead. So Home Instead was also able to introduce a peer recognition program specifically to address their turnover rate. Home Instead is in the healthcare space, and they provide in-home care for senior patients. If you guys know anything about the healthcare industry, some of you may be in the healthcare industry, you know that it's often very stressful and difficult work. Most companies that provide this kind of service, like an in-house service, really struggle with retaining their employees. In fact, I think the average tenure for these types of services is generally less than a couple of years. So Home Instead was really looking for ways to differentiate themselves from other healthcare providers and then position the company as an employer of choice to attract new talent. So they created a peer recognition program called Peerceive. And basically, employees could recognize one another for the great work happening across all of their departments. So it increased visibility as well. In addition, they decided to create some really cool awards to help drive specific behaviors. So they introduced things like a patient care award, safety awards, and much more. These small changes had a dramatic effect on their employee retention. In fact, they were able to reduce their employee turnover by over 40%, if you can believe it, which is absolutely outstanding, especially in this space. And it's a really great example of how introducing something as simple as a peer recognition program can directly affect your retention rates.
Awesome, sir. Really good overview of how rewards and recognition can retain top performers. Next up, we're going to switch gears again, and we're going to talk about how you can use rewards and recognition to maintain customer relationships. And to dig into that, I'm going to share an anecdote, another story on how to use awards and core values to build strong client relationships. And this one's a little bit more fun. And before I get into the story, I'll share three stats actually. So in my experience as a customer, obviously everybody loves great customer service. And just to reiterate, here's the true importance of it. 73% of customers say they stay loyal to brands because of friendly customer service reps. 77% of happy customers are likely to share a positive brand experience, the whole idea of customer referrals, which drives many, many businesses, even enterprises. And here's a stat that I thought was super interesting, is that consumer expectations are in fact changing. Very, very specifically, 54% of consumers have admitted that they have higher expectations for customer service than they did even 1 year ago. Kind of true of me too. I think everybody globally just has higher standards now that there's more technology to make feedback faster. But let's get into the story side of this. This one, again, is more fun because it's something we rolled out internally. These are not new ideas. These are really well-established strategies. So at Bucket List, fundamentally taking great care of customers is kind of part of our DNA. And in fact, one of our company core values is to care for customers. And we really wanted to reward employees who helped create this great customer journey. Now, of course, many of you out there are probably feeling the same way. And how do you do this? How do you bring this program alive? So we did two big initiatives. First, we launched something called the Promoter Award. And how does this work? So we ask one question at the end of a client engagement. 30 days after we launch, we ask, how likely are you to refer a friend out of 10? and clients can obviously answer from 0 to 10. And we hand out an award anytime a client gives us a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Now, statistically, if somebody gives you a 9 or 10 out of 10, they are what you call a promoter or a raving fan. If somebody gives you a 7 or 8, that means they're open to competition. And if somebody gives you 6 or below, that is they are in fact a demoter. We also celebrate the promoter award at our monthly and even weekly meetings. Something else we do that has been really successful is we took our core value, which is care for customers, and we wove it into our recognition. And how does that work? Basically, employees can recognize one another for living this value. And it doesn't have to be something massive or big. It's just those little acts or little tokens of service where you take good care of clients, you're really responsive, whatever it might be. And we certainly do, I think, an excellent job of taking good care of customers. And inside of our social recognition feed, it's really easy for people to recognize one another. Now, what are the outcomes? Where did this whole thing land? Up on screen, you'll see these are actually net promoter scores. Inside of the software space, if you look at companies like Adobe, Microsoft, Google, Intuit, et cetera, they typically score between 28 to 55. Our net promoter score is 96. I'm super proud of it. It's as a result of rewarding and recognizing outstanding customer service. There's also, of course, a bunch of other things we do behind the scenes. But again, rewards and recognition can really drive specific outcomes and behaviors for your business. Awesome. A couple of bonus ideas. So I just kind of gave an example of this promoter award and core values. You don't have to use those. There's some really neat ways you can customize client relationship awards for your industry. So let's say you're in the healthcare, for example, you can give it a patient care award. And I guarantee you this will drive the quality of patient care. You can even weave this into your organizational values. And again, that'll drive up those little acts of patient care. If you're in the hospitality space, maybe your hotel, for example, you can offer things like a 5-star TripAdvisor review or maybe a Yelp award. Perhaps you're in the retail space offering like a high review on Google. Again, you can incentivize all these things with rewards and recognition. Really powerful ways to motivate your staff. And again, we've actually, in fact, rolled all these different initiatives out and seen really good results for organizations. Awesome. So next up, we're going to talk about driving and increasing revenue. I know in this group today, where the vast majority of us are HR leaders, people leaders, but of course we know the importance of revenue. It's kind of like the lifeblood that keeps our businesses alive. And let's talk about how rewards and recognition can be used to drive and increase revenue. So I'm sure many of you already have commission programs in place, full to very massive sales teams. However, there's a whole world of sales incentives, which are great motivational and recognition tools. In summary, the core function of a sales program is really to improve sales focus and sales team motivation. And I'm going to break down all the different ways you can do this inside of your sales incentive program. So the number one reason why sales awards are used, and this is a statistic, is that organizations use it to increase overall sales. And at the end of this mini anecdote, I'll share some quick stats on how sales awards can measurably improve overall sales performance. But when you roll out when you working with a large team, especially inside of sales, there's all sorts of other things you can incentivize. Specifically, you can reward selling of a specific product. You can reward growing market or mind share. Said another way, growing your brand. You can reward completing training modules, demonstrating product knowledge, or even obtaining referrals. So lots of little initiatives that are available to you. And how do you do it? How do you implement a good sales awards program? You really want to define what behavior you want to influence. And there's so many different behaviors, as we just saw. You want to, of course, create the award. You want to communicate the program, keep it really simple. You want to provide regular feedback. And to be really clear, something we do, for example, is we have leaderboards. We check in on a weekly basis. We're super transparent about all information. And of course, we always have clear, compelling awards that really matter to the participant and receiver. So at the end of the day, what is the return on investment for sales awards? So it's interesting. 2 quick fun facts. There's over 23 billion spent on sales incentives in the US each year. The vast majority of top performing companies use sales awards. But when I was digging around, I was trying to find some really strong ROI associated with sales incentives. And of course, it is out there, but it's not that well documented. There's some great reports that demonstrate that a good sales incentive program that's well communicated can lift or have an ROI between 11% to well over 100%. So lots of drivers, motivators, and levers available to you. Awesome. So we're able to get through a bunch of material today. I felt like we were able to tackle some of the bigger problems and opportunities facing you. What did we learn about today? We talked about the fundamentals of recognition and the importance of storytelling and best practices. We talked about employee referrals, how employee referrals can increase the number of great candidates, how to retain staff and build a great culture of inclusivity through peer recognition, how to drive customer satisfaction, and how to increase revenue. I'd love to turn it back to the audience today. Maybe use the chat window. What were your favorite takeaways? Anything of value or of interest from your point of view? And I see a bunch of questions flowing through. Awesome storytelling.
I was just going to mention, Jason, there's been some really great questions and comments happening throughout the course of the presentation. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff for us to talk about in the QA. So thanks everyone for participating. It's been great.
That's great, guys. Thank you so much. I love the idea of unique rewards for employee referrals. Awesome. Really enjoyed the storytelling component to have a lasting impression. 100%. Peer recognition is my nugget. Absolutely. Storytelling is a powerful. I feel like we created a whole room of storytellers, which I love. Everybody's going to go home, start telling stories, and of course the workplace. Great. We're going to switch over to Q&A in a few seconds. There's a ton of great questions that have been asked. We're gonna definitely dig into all of those. I'll have to kind of switch gears and just throw this out there for those who are interested. Bucket List Rewards is the #1 ranked employee rewards and recognition program. We make it really easy for you to recognize your staff. We have a full peer-to-peer recognition platform, manager spot bonuses. It's a true enterprise platform, and we plug into all your favorite tools, and we have the coolest rewards. However, I'm saying all this, if you're interested in learning more, I'm going to pop up one more poll question here. Give me a second. If you're interested in learning more, just let us know. We'd be happy to share some information. Let me launch this poll. Yeah, would you like to learn more about Bucket List Rewards? If yes, go ahead and click yes. If not, that is totally cool as well. But like I said, we're an amazing platform, I believe, and we're really good at helping you solve big issues and big problems. Let this roll for just a few more seconds here. Cool. And I go ahead and end poll. Thank you, team. Looks like a bunch of responses rolled in. And let's get into the Q&A and the HRCI credit. So obviously, here's the HRCI credit. So 565690. And again, we're going to be sending this out afterwards as well, but I'll let that stay up on screen for about another 2 to 3 seconds. Great. And let's switch over to Q&A and get into it a little bit. So there's a whole bunch of questions here. Give me a moment, team, and we'll start running through these. Awesome. So first question here, I'm just going to go ahead and Curtis, this feels like it's relevant to you. I was wondering, how does one get started with peer recognition? Curtis, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. So I would say one of the first things that you'd want to consider is a platform for delivery. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing for peer recognition, there's high visibility into it. So definitely having a communication channel would be a good idea right from the start. And then I would also suggest that, if it's something you want to get started with today, start asking your staff, just ask them to recognize one another at existing town hall or, all hands meetings where you're meeting regularly.
Awesome. That's a great idea. And I just saw another question pop through the chat window. So thank you, Catherine, for the question. And she had asked, any suggestion for non-cash referral bonuses that are reasonably priced, but still compelling? Curtis, do you want to answer this one and I'll throw in my color commentary?
Yeah, I love this question. So there, obviously, the sky is really the limit for something like this. You can get as creative as you like. What we've seen that's really effective is things like, paid time off. Obviously, that's going to resonate with staff right away. Something fun like VIP parking is something we see utilized quite a bit as well. But really, the sky's the limit. We've seen things like having your boss personally deliver coffee to you every morning for a week, for example. That's something that's low cost but a lot of fun. So just get the creativity flowing and you can come up with some really great ideas.
Yeah. And Catherine, to your point and to Curtis's answer, I've seen programs rolled out with nonprofit organizations for really affordable budgets because they're able to be really creative when it comes to the rewards. So Curtis gave a bunch of good ideas. I'll throw in there that a lot of times companies already have a whole bunch of swag available to them. So sometimes you can get extra special swag or cool swag created. Those can be fun and affordable rewards. And often, even in your own backyard, there's by your own backyard, I mean your own neighborhood. There's some really great organizations you can probably tap into, whether it's like a local pub or a local vineyard tour. I know those may sound expensive, but trust me, there's some great opportunities to connect there and reward employees in a meaningful way. Oh, here's a good one from Scott Collins. So thank you, Scott. What are your communication recommendations for a production environment? I'm taking it you mean like manufacturing, some sort of manufacturing environment where there may not be electronic communication tools available. Great question. Curtis, I see you nodding. Do you want to have a crack at this one or?
Yeah, well, I've seen this one personally quite a bit. So one thing I would mention, obviously, is if people have smartphones, there are apps you can get. Bucket List, for example, has a mobile app, but also, maybe you're using WhatsApp or Teams or whatever it is. So there's communication channels there. But also something that we've seen really effective is if your folks don't have smartphones or it's not something they utilize frequently, if you have things like TVs, for example, in your manufacturing facilities, you can put the recognitions that are taking place on those TV, so they're still broadcasted to all the folks that are in the manufacturing environment. So that would be something I would suggest. I don't know, Jason, if you've got anything you want to add to that.
No, I think that's an awesome idea, and an idea you'd mentioned earlier in the presentation. Most companies will have some sort of like fireside chat or breakout meeting where people get together face to face, and those typically happen weekly, monthly, quarterly. Tap into that. Like, for example, let's say it's a monthly manager meeting where they chat with the fellows on the manufacturing floor, have leaders recognize staff for great performance and invite staff to recognize their colleagues for great performance as well. Again, what leaders pay attention to and talk about, people will do more of. So that's just a very quick, easy way to recognize great performers. Awesome. And then one more on, so this is very similar to another question, but how do you choose non-cash rewards that are compelling to a diverse workforce? So Curtis shared a bunch of ideas. One thing I would add and or maybe reiterate is that survey your organization and ask them how they want to be rewarded. Maybe as a takeaway, I will commit to everybody here attending today. We're going to send you a link to a survey. It's kind of a default survey that you can send to your team. You can send it to a cross section or the whole group to ask them how they want to be rewarded. It comes with a bunch of cool ideas built into it. But yeah, just ask people, they'll tell you.
I think,
yeah, go ahead, Curtis.
I was just going to add to that. I think, often people don't actually know how they can be rewarded, right? So they maybe haven't been exposed to the different types of rewards that could be available. So surveying them obviously to see if they've got any ideas are great, but also provide some suggestions, give them some context that will help get their creativity going, and they can come back with feedback and thoughts on what they would enjoy.
Awesome, that's great. I'm just gonna have questions in a few different panels here, so I'm kind of browsing around. I want to make sure I get through a good majority of these. Answered. Definitely no cash. No, I missed a message. And Curtis, you want to jump to the question? Let me know too.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through as well here.
Oh, I can speak to one quick one. This is maybe specific to us. So how do your clients handle the taxable issue, income issue for recipients? So we have a bunch of reporting on the back end that can be imported into your payroll department. And there's a couple ways you can handle it. You can handle rewards as imputed income, or you can, meaning the company will pay the tax that might be a part of a reward, or alternatively, you can let the employee pay the taxable benefit. So there's a couple of options that are available to you. We have reports that can be imported on the back end into payroll to handle all that sort of stuff.
I've got a question here, a good one. Any ideas for rebuilding culture in a new hybrid work environment? Obviously there's a lot of discussion happening around this. A lot of companies are pivoting to a hybrid or even fully remote environment. And I think, one of the things that I've seen that's most important is just finding ways to ensure that people don't work in silos, right? So sharing the great work happening across the organization. And again, I would go back to how peer recognition is a really great way to get the ball rolling in the right direction for you, because chances are, management might not always see great work happening into this department, but most likely peers in the workforce will. And so, if I share the great work that Jason's doing, he might share the great work that somebody else is doing, and so on and so forth. So it would increase the overall visibility.
Awesome. And Michelle, we do have another webinar recorded on our website that talks all about building great remote cultures, but and there's a bunch of different tactics you can implement, like weekly one-to-ones with managers, all obviously done remote, weekly huddles, having everybody dial in via video, and where the company shares kind of an all hands update, like how are you trending for revenue, how are your key initiatives going, recognizing great performance. There's actually a ton of stuff you can do when implementing or when building culture in a hybrid work environment. Awesome. So I think we've been able to go through the bulk of questions here, and we've done a great job. We're right on time. So I think we can start winding things up and wrapping things up. So I love to thank you, the attendee. I'm really excited that you guys got some good value from today's session. And if we could be of any further help, please let us know. You can reach out to either Curtis or I on LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about Bucket List, you can just go to Bucket List Rewards, and there's all the information about us as a company as well. So we'd be happy to help you out, and happy to help you out, answer questions, provide best practices, anything that might be of value or interest. So with that, team, thank you so much for attending today.